It's Miami, Florida State Week. It's for Florida, it's for pride, it's for recruits, it's possibly for the ACC, and who knows, maybe even more. Is Clemson's rivalry game with Georgia Tech suddenly a trap game for the Tigers? And where are all the sleepers in the ACC? Duke, of course, and who else? This is ACC Breakdown coming your way every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, and I bring up and bring in not just the best bloggers in the ACC, but a fired-up bunch tonight. Here we've got Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat on SB Nation's platform for Georgia Tech, Dan Rubin, also an SB Nation guy, BC, Miami, and SB Nation represented by Cam Underwood. And then also Brittnee Taylor Newman from Football.com, just an innocent bystander in the pre-show banter. And then, of course, myself, I'm merely Mark Rogers and MarkRogersTV. So we have plenty to talk about here, and we have three losers on the panel here. Of course, just their football teams are losers this past week, so we're going to let them just kind of vent, let it go. This is kind of a midweek thing. We'll let you go, and then you can look ahead to Saturday with pleasing thoughts. So, Joey, let's start with you and Georgia Tech, 0-2 in the ACC.
Yeah, been a rough 3 weeks for Georgia Tech. Obviously, 3 straight losses. It's been very irritating watching the team over that period of time. You go back to Notre Dame, the team just wasn't blocking or doing anything right. It seemed like it was just a totally different team. You move a week ahead to Duke, and it wasn't really a whole lot better. It was kind of amazing how they lost that game. It felt like it was a very winnable game by all means. Finally, they come back home, play against North Carolina. They give up 3 touchdowns in the first half and somehow get outscored 38-10 the rest of the way. Very, very tough time to be a Tech fan right now. They're dealing with a lot of problems in every facet of the game, from injuries to X's and O's to skill and everything in between. So yeah, been a rough few weeks to say the very least.
So Joey's a little frustrated, but his patriotism uncompromised. That's good to know. Very nice. All right, Dan, you're up. Little BC venting.
Yeah, it's been. You know what the funny thing is? When I say it's been a rough 3 weeks, they actually won a game in there. Though you wouldn't know it with the way the pulse of the fans have been the last couple weeks. It's been a rough go since the Florida State game. Boston College's offense has really struggled. Couldn't put together the game against Duke. Ran out of gas in the fourth quarter. The 2-quarterback system is really struggling for the Eagles this year. But it's mostly, when we're talking about venting or we're talking about being frustrated, from my perspective, it's extremely frustrating to watch the reaction around this team. We knew at the beginning of the year that this Boston College team was going to struggle offensively. We knew it dating back to last year when Steve Adazio said this team is going to have holes and this team's going to struggle. So it's been a tough go of it just to watch, and it's been extremely frustrating and testing of the patience of fans. But at the same time, fans are pretty quick to jump off the BC bandwagon with the way they've played the last couple of weeks and the fact that there's no end in sight. Steve Adazio is committed to playing 2 quarterbacks until someone forces him to not play the other guy. That hasn't happened. The quarterback position hasn't developed the way he would have liked it. It's inconsistent. And the fact that fans are losing patience with it is a sign that when you sit back and you look at 2 7-5 seasons with a tube of toothpaste, a pair of socks, and some chewing gum the last couple of years, this year has been incredibly frustrating because you'd think someone would have given him the guy more credit after the last couple of years.
All right, so we started with Joey, and I know he's deeply passionate and cares about his football team so much, but he was well reserved and delivered the news and the progress report. Then Dan brought us a little bit more ire, and I just somehow think it's going to come to a crescendo here once we get Cam on.
Yeah. Yeah. So we found a way to lose at Cincinnati. And that is such an Al Golden kind of loss since he's been coach. Just talking to my friends and reading other pieces, seeing the hype speech before the game, don't rise to the occasion, don't make this a moment. Look, a game is a moment, and clearly we didn't rise to any occasion. Drive right down the field, talked about, how those penalties were going to come back and get us, have a holding call on the first drive, settle for 3 and not 7, just look a hot mess all game long. And, I mean, at the best time possible, because the ACC held the game time for Miami, Florida State back, and for 2 reasons. One, to see if we're going to get the 8 o'clock slot, and because game day was waiting to see if both teams won, because they would have been in Tallahassee. But no, we lose on Thursday before any other team comes on, and then game day goes somewhere else. The ire has been just up to levels that we've seen only at the end of last season. I mean, people are calling for Al Golden's head. And we continue to find ways to lose games instead of winning them. And I thought that maybe after Nebraska we turned the corner, and, well, we lost to Cincinnati.
And so, Cam, looking at the Twitter feed of particular players, maybe the ire of Miami fans grew a little bit, but maybe some comic relief for others.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, people are definitely having fun at our expense right now. And it's been that way for the better part of a decade. So, when I was in college, I was there for the 2000 season, the 01 season, the 02 seasons, all those things when, Miami was great. And, I guess this is me having to pay my penance for that greatness now. But Miami safety Rayshon Jenkins, he took to Twitter and posted this on the website where he was calling out the fans for being fair weather, he called them. But, I'm a long-suffering fan. Like, if I were fair weather, I would have dished this team. If we were all fair weather, we would all dish this team. So he called us out with a Instagram post that got screenshotted. He came back subsequently and then, backpedaled off of that. Oh, I was just emotional the day after a game, and I saw some stuff on social media, whatever. Other than that, Dallas Crawford is another safety on the team who's been outright atrocious this season. So we had another Miami fan went at him on Facebook, saying that he should get benched and have a scholarship pulled and all these kind of things. And then one of our linebackers, Tyreek McCord, he took exception to the way that this fan was talking to Dallas Crawford. So then Tyreek came in the conversation and said, oh, you're not going to talk to him like that. When you come down to Miami, there's not going to be any words. It's going to be these hands, basically alluding to the fact that he was going to beat this guy up for talking badly and things like that. So, and Tyreek McCord, he came out. There were a couple articles, Miami Herald and the South Florida Sun Sentinel and Palm Beach Post, I think all 3 had it, where he had apologized just today for those kind of things. But, 2 players definitely lashing out to some of the fans for some of the things that have been heard and said about this team in the aftermath of a loss that quite simply is unacceptable by anybody's standards, whether you're Miami or not. We shouldn't be losing games like this. Any of the teams that are represented on this panel today, you shouldn't lose games like that against a team of the caliber of Cincinnati, who gave up 794 yards and 53 points literally the week before. Those were not exaggerative numbers. The players were lashing out, and then everybody's laughing about it because Miami football is largely a joke to many people right now.
So before we came on tonight, Cam and Joey were sharing what I believe I'm going to now term dumb stuff, and we may start a new segment of the show and just call it dumb stuff. So Georgia Tech with their share of dumb stuff from this week. Joey.
Yeah, so things were going great, particularly for the defense. They held North Carolina to pretty much nothing on their first few drives, and then I believe it was the third drive, Georgia Tech had one of its best defensive players, if not its best defensive player, senior defensive tackle Adam Gotsis. He was thrown out of the game on a targeting call. I assume because he's 6'5". That's the best explanation I could come with. He went in and he was rushing the quarterback, and he made what looked like a very clean hit. It was face mask to face mask, effectively, which is pretty much how they draw it up as a form tackle, and somehow that constitutes targeting and an ejection. And I can tell you that I was in attendance, and I've read some stuff on Twitter. That place was booming with people upset about that call, and it made no sense. I cannot understand and I cannot fathom how that call was made and then reviewed and still upheld. It makes no sense at all, and it very well may have been the difference in the game, because now Georgia Tech is playing without either of its two best defensive tackles.
Brittnee, we finally get to you. I think I need to reintroduce you. This is Brittnee Taylor Newman from Football.com. We finally introduce her to the show. We finally get to the brains and the beauty. And so, Brittnee, you got Florida State and Miami this week. It's a precious week to people like Cam and others around the Sunshine State.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a comment on the intro here real quick. I'm not sure, Mark, if you and I should be charging by the hour for all this football therapy that we're listening to, or if next week I should just bring a bowl of popcorn and a glass of wine on air so I can just enjoy the show. This was very, very entertaining. I hate that all three of these guys were so upset because they're very, very smart guys, but purely entertaining. I love the dumb stuff.
You bring the wine, I'll bring the cheese.
Okay, there we go. But yeah, I think that there's a couple of games that I'm excited to see this week. Florida State, Miami, obviously one of them. Although some people have downplayed Miami, as Cam mentioned on Twitter, I really think that this is going to be an exciting game. It's a rivalry game, and it always has a particular brand of heat to it, so I don't think it's really going to matter if struggling. I think it's still going to be a good game to watch. I think one of the things that is really, really key to this game, Brad Kaya is a fantastic quarterback, and by the numbers compared to Everett Golson, is outplaying him this year. But Florida State's pass defense may be the key that neutralizes Kaya. And they've allowed 546 passing yards throughout 4 games the whole season. So that's an average of 141 passing yards per game. So that may disable them a little bit there. They're really going to need some of their running backs to be able to step up to be able to fill that gap, because so far they've relied very, very heavily on receivers. They've got just over 1,100 receiving yards, so that's kind of the bulk of their offensive attack this year, and I'm not sure that will serve them well coming into this week. But definitely a very, very hyped match. I've heard there will be 2 banners this week that say Fire Al Golden. There's also a Kickstarter campaign or a GoFundMe campaign, I think, that's funded by Florida State fans that says Keep Al Golden, and we've seen the shirts that have kind of taken over the internet, the Keep Al Golden shirts. So I think this game has a lot of fire to it. I don't think it really matters that Miami has struggled a little bit. They won those first few games. They lost last week against Cincinnati, and nothing would make them feel better than to go into Tallahassee this week and upset the Seminoles.
All right, Cam, I'm going to tee you up, and I'm also going to give us a shameless plug that Cam and I knocked out about a good 25 minutes on Florida State Miami prep. Catch that on the State of the U or at MarkRogersTV on YouTube. So, Cam, I got 2 things for you. Brittnee brought up the Al Golden mockery at this point, so I know that you've defended him. He brought you through a number of bad times. Now he has talent, he has things in place, and he's not winning games, the games that he should. And secondly, what is the formula for a Miami victory this Saturday?
I will concur with what Brittnee said. This is definitely a big game. I know people are playing it or downplaying it. There was reports out of practice that Miami, we are not playing the Florida State, the war chant during practice as we did in previous years to get ready for that, for this game. So there's a lot that goes into this, even though I think that all the comments from like Al Golden and Brad Kaya and people after practice, we try to have a level of intensity for all of our ACC games. Look, that's nice. It's a good soundbite. This is not all your ACC games. This is not any other game. This is Miami and Florida State. It is a singular game, and it matters like that. And I get why Al Golden's trying to downplay it, because we had an absolute collapse after losing to Florida State in the game that we should have won last year. We're trying to avoid that by saying, okay, it's just another ACC game. It doesn't have any extra special stuff to it. Yes, it does. Okay, and we have to bring it. And I know, okay, yeah, we looked terrible last week. We lost. I wrote a 5-line game recap that I think got 23,000 clicks just because it looked bad, everything is terrible, this sucks, bye. Literally was what I wrote. And people, the comments were going in that. And because what else do you want to say? Like, everybody around the country saw that on Thursday night. So, but that's in the past. This is the present. It is not any other game. This is a special game. This is a big game. This is a rivalry game. It's a game that matters. You have guys on both teams who played with and against each other in high school. Ermon Lane and Tyree Brady, one wide receiver for Florida State, the other one for Miami. They're both from the city of Homestead. One went to Homestead High School, one went to Southgate High School. They played against each other. They played together in Optimus. They played against each other all through high school. One's a sophomore, one's a redshirt freshman. So they're the same graduating year. They know each other. You have Dalvin Cook and Joseph Yearby, both starting running backs who played in the same backfield at Miami Central High School. Think about how scary that was for high school defenses just 2 years ago, by the way, because those are 2 sophomores. Everybody knows everybody. This is familiarity. This is family. It goes, I mean, Hatfields and McCoys is what this is. This is a huge game. So it matters. What does Miami have to do to win? Honestly, the offensive line has to become a unit that it has not shown itself to be or capable of being yet this season. That's the very first thing, because as Brittnee said, yeah, we have almost 1,200 yards passing. We have 700 yards rushing in 4 games. 1,800 yards of offense. We were putting up points against all these teams. None of that can happen if the offensive line does not do their job, both in pass pro and in run blocking. So that's number one. Number two, we have to win the turnover battle. And that is something that we've done very well. I think we're +8 or +9 in 4 games this year. So we need to continue to get takeaways. We need to win the turnover battle. And we have to hit our shot plays. We've stalled our drives recently. I think we're in the 100s or 110s as to touchdown percentage, the complete drives, or in the red zone. We're not doing very well scoring touchdowns when we have the ball. So when we take shots, we need to hit those shots. I talked about it last week, and we were not able to do it. I said you have to knock them out. It's like or I said that earlier this week in the other video. You have to knock Florida State out because they've beaten us 5 years in a row, and mentally between their ears, they think that they can beat us, or there's not a possibility that Miami can beat them. And for that to happen, we have to knock out the mentality and then the team. So we have to not knock them out once. We got to knock them out twice, and that can only happen if you hit your shot plays. So if we do those things, if we win the turnover battle, offensive line steps up, and we hit our shot plays, we can be successful. If we don't, I think that we're looking at year 6 of horribleness where I have to wear a Florida State T-shirt to work on the subsequent.
You got to be Buster Douglas, right? 1990. That's what you said. Buster Douglas.
You got to beat Buster Douglas to knock out Mike Tyson. You got to take your shots and you got to hit them. And it's just like they said in The Wire. You come at the king, you best not miss. And I know they're not the kings of college football anymore, but they're the kings of this rivalry right now, and we got to come at them.
Yeah, you can't be Sugar Ray against Marvin Hagler and try to score points and hide all night and then win the split decision.
No, because we started out strong last year, and then we tried to do that scoring points thing, just tap, throw a couple jabs, and then defend the lead, and you saw what happened.
Rope-a-dope, Muhammad Ali. Okay, I'm done with the boxing. All right, Dan, I think I'm going to take my cue from Cam. I got your next story for you. Boston College, bad offense, boring. We're done.
Yeah, that about summed it up nicely, which is funny because that was not the way this year was supposed to go at all. This year, all we had hyped about, I remember we talked in the preseason, and I said, hey, we talked to John Meter-Perrell, who's the radio broadcaster for BC, and he said, don't count out these athletes. They've got good athletes, they've got good receivers, they've got a quarterback who can deliver sharp passes to them, and then everybody got hurt. So anything that we had going on there, those are all gone. You lose 2 receivers in the preseason, you lose your quarterback against Florida State, and now you're looking at ground and pound and pray that works. You have an offensive line that's young and inconsistent, and none of it seems to be coming together. Good thing you have a top 5 defense, which I think might be the best defense in college football right now. They are playing out of their mind, but it's not enough. And when you watch Boston College, it's incredibly frustrating because it's run, punt, because you also can't trust the quarterback to deliver the ball in the right spot. You're dealing with 2 quarterbacks who have never played a snap in college before this year. Troy Flutie, one of the greatest quarterbacks to come out of the state of Massachusetts. He's set and broke every record. Take the name out of the equation. If his last name wasn't Flutie, you'd still look at him and say he was a tremendous high school athlete in the state of Massachusetts. And Jeff Smith, who's a true freshman. Jeff Smith, we learned when he comes to throwing the ball, he's either throwing it 5 yards beyond the receiver or he's throwing it at his feet. He's a tremendous athlete, very fast, great quickness, can really run a read option better than anyone else, probably in uniform for BC. But you put 10 guys in the box and force him to beat you with a throw, and he can't do it. Same token, Troy Flutie, a little bit slower, probably better suited to run a spread. We're not running a spread at Boston College. We don't have the numbers to be doing the spread. We don't have the receivers to be doing the spread right now. We just don't have the bodies. And you're looking at a situation where the quarterbacks maybe are a little mismatched. Neither one of them has taken control of the offense, like I said, and you're back to where you were essentially in training camp, where you're hoping to ground and pound and grind out drives and get points. Now, that said, you've lost John Hilleman with a broken foot. Miles Willis had mono at the beginning of the year, and I think he's dealing with either a hamstring or a groin or a lower body injury of some sort. He's out. So that leaves you with 2 healthy running backs before you have to burn a red shirt. And those 2 guys are only as good as the offensive line is going to make them, and your center is out with an injury. So you're dealing, the offensive line's gotten better, the running game's gotten better, but what can you do? Everywhere you look around, there's guys dropping like flies, and when you're a young, inexperienced offense that struggled to begin with, now you're going to struggle even more, and then you just try to go back to what works and what did work, and when that's not working, now everybody just loses their mind.
My sincere apology to the rest of the panel, to anybody watching, listening. We just spent how much time on the Boston College quarterback position?
Probably a lot longer than we probably should have.
No, it was great analysis, Dan. I'm just telling you that you better get some kind of message to spark the boys, because if we get near the end of the season and Boston College is playing like this and scoring 7 points per game, we're going to give you like 15 seconds of 30 minutes on the show. That's about all you're going to have at that point.
I might not want even to come on and discuss the fry. I mean, it is people complain about not being exciting. And it's hilarious because to me, I just care about winning football games, and all I care is that they become bowl eligible. But it is taking that and testing that patience, because it is boring football. It is like watching 1950s SMU football all over again.
All right, Joey. So we know that even if Georgia Tech loses at Clemson this Saturday, they can recover, they can win some games in that division and go to a bowl game. But in all intents and purposes of having the type of season that you were looking forward to, that most Yellow Jacket fans were looking for, this is the season, correct?
You know, first of all, you say that sure they can recover in this division and everything. Can they? I mean, at this point, they're 2-3. They're going into Clemson to take on a team that they've really struggled to beat on the road 3 straight times. They've lost 3 straight times in Death Valley by at least 2 touchdowns. They've been having all sorts of problems, and then you're talking about a team that's 2-4, and to be bowl eligible, they need 4 wins across the slate of Pittsburgh, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Virginia, Miami, and Georgia. They need to win 4 of those, so we'll have to see. Obviously, this season is not going quite according to plan. There was some preseason talk, especially from some national media, talking about Tech being a possible, dark horse playoff contender, things like this. I thought it was a much more reasonable expectation that they win 8 or 9 games. But yeah, this has been almost a worst-case scenario season so far for Georgia Tech. They went into the North Carolina game with 11 scholarship players out of the game injured. That's not counting the one player who had left the team. The scholarship linebacker Bo Hankins had departed the team earlier that week because he just wanted to end his football career. He's had enough with his concussions. And then they ended the game with 2 more starters on defense out of the game, with Vigatsis ejection and Chris Milton, the starting corner, being injured during the game. Put all that on top of, you got a whole bunch of rookie skill position players on the exteriors, and it hasn't looked good. Justin Thomas has been pressing, trying to do too much. It hasn't worked out. The team has failed to make plays when given opportunities. I know there was a point in the North Carolina game where the Tar Heels were on the 2-yard line or so, and they threw a quick bubble screen, and DJ White jumped it, and by all means it should have been a pick 6, and he dropped it. I mean, nothing has gone right for this team over the last 3 weeks since they've been playing legitimate competition. And at this point, if they are gonna make a bowl game and keep the 18-year streak alive, I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. And I think that's kind of where a lot of Tech fans are right now, because this has not been a good football team. They have not done the things that they need to do to win, and it's almost a miracle that they've been so close, within the margins that they've been with each game that they've played.
All right, I'm going to Brittnee, and I'm going to go back through the panel. Anything else you want to say about the ACC? If you want to say more about Florida State, Miami, then we're going to run through our predictions. So, Brittnee, you're up.
Anything else I want to say? Well, I think if we're looking maybe a little bit further down the road, I know this week we kind of were in the minute and looking at the slate of games coming up this weekend. But I'm really going to be keeping an eye on some of the coastal matchups this weekend to see how those things end up affecting who wins that division in the end, because I was one of the people, Joey, was referring there to media members that were taking Georgia Tech for a playoff spot. I wasn't going that far, but I was thinking they were going to end up winning the division this year. So it's wide open. I'm going to be keeping an eye on Duke and UNC, and if my mind comes back this weekend, even on Virginia Tech, because we're just sort of getting into the meat of the conference division play there, and I think when we start looking at the teams in that division, it's sort of wide open at this point. It's anybody's race. So obviously going to be watching the Clemson-Georgia Tech game this weekend. I will be in person covering the Miami-Florida State game in Tallahassee, but I will be keeping an eye on those coastal teams because I don't know what to expect at this point in the season. It's kind of wide open.
It is wide open. We're just getting started. 2 games down. All right, Cam, anything else you'd like to throw our way?
Man, we just got to win this week. There's no other way to say it. Like, I'm not going to get hype. I'm not going to yell. I mean, you see the shirt. You already know where I stand. I'm hell or high water, whether, if we move the game to South Carolina to actually embrace that high water. But I don't know. But Canes got to win. That's it.
We know where you stand, Cam. All right, Dan, we've got, Georgia Tech, Clemson, Wake, and your boys, BC, Duke, Army, Virginia, Pitt, Syracuse, South Florida, NC State, Virginia Tech. Both have to bounce back. Anything else stand out to you?
Yeah, I guess for all the teams that are struggling, the entire ACC across the board's been struggling this year a little bit, except for Clemson, who just beat Notre Dame. And I guess if we want a college football playoff berth as ACC fans, let's all hitch to the Clemson wagon right now because they're looking like they're going to be the one team to do it. As for the rest of us, it's still early. Keep the faith. I know that I say that as a Boston College fan who's at the beginning of a 3-year process. I'm not like poor Cam who's been down there with the Al Golden banners, or the Georgia Tech with Joey, where they were supposed to be. I had them as going to the ACC as ACC champions, and that doesn't look like it might happen this year. And I say it doesn't look like that because we're all kind of already. It probably isn't. But let's all hitch to the Clemson bandwagon. And get a team into the college football playoff because that's just what we would like as a conference. But at the same token, if your team's struggling, have some faith. I say that as the eternal optimist who's bought in hook, line, and sinker on Steve Adazio. I say that as probably the only person left who's standing there, and people are calling me an excuse machine for Steve Adazio. It's awesome. I'm taking so much heat this week. It's fantastic. But keep the faith. Still early. We're only halfway through the season, and a lot can happen in the next few weeks.
All right, kids, it's time to make some predictions. Let's start with you, Joey, and we're going to run through games. So we're going to run through each game and go through the entire panel game by game by game. And we'll start on Friday night. We got Virginia Tech at 0-1 in the ACC hosting North Carolina State, which opened with a loss as well against Louisville.
Yeah, obviously a strange game for both of these teams coming off of home losses where they were pretty unimpressive, and kind of disappointing. I think I'm going to take the home team and the Hokies, but I do not feel good about it.
Dan, we got Virginia Tech hosting NC State.
I'm going to take NC State just because every time I seem to pick Virginia Tech, they seem to lose. So I'm done picking them.
That's what we're looking for, Dan. Hardcore football analysis. Thank you.
That's it. X's and O's right there.
All right, Cam, you got the Hokies and the Wolfpack.
Sorry about that. Had the microphone muted. NC State, if for no other reason than to give Virginia Tech 2 ACC losses and hopefully help out Miami in the pursuit of the Coastal Division Championship.
Okay. Again, more hoping and wishing and less predicting. That's what we're getting out of these people. All right, Brittnee, bring some professionalism to it. Let's get your true prediction here on this game.
I think it's going to come down to one thing, which I don't know yet, and that's whether or not Brewer is back at quarterback for the Hokies. When they opened against Ohio State, I was pretty impressed with him those first 3 quarters. Their offensive line is shaky. That's not good. But I think if he's back, they've got a shot. I think if he's not, I take NC State.
Who was that?
Virginia Tech, if the quarterback is back. Otherwise, they've got no chance.
We had injury report there. We had breakdown of the offensive line. All right, Cam, did you hear that? Syracuse, South Florida.
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. South Florida.
South Florida. These go on record, of course. Dan, you got Syracuse going to South Florida.
I'm taking the Orange. I think they're a little bit better than I originally gave them credit for as a team. And Scott Schaefer has done a good job this year, which it kills me to admit at times. Plus, he hasn't 5 games into the season. He hasn't destroyed a podium yet, so I guess he's miles ahead of where he was last year. But I'm taking Syracuse to go down there and pick up a non-conference win.
I will be tracking down our records from our friend Mike McDaniel this week. Joey, we've got South Florida hosting the Orange.
You know, I don't think Syracuse is that great of a team, but I think they're a little more hard-nosed than South Florida is. I'll take the Orange.
Okay, Brittney, it's Syracuse, it's South Florida.
I'm taking Syracuse as well. They've got a little bit of momentum building, and I think they're going to take it to South Florida, and we'll see them pull out another win.
Okay, Brittney, let's stay with you. Virginia at Pitt.
I'm taking Pitt in that one. I was pretty impressed with them. I have been so far this season. And the Cavs are defense, offense. There's so many questions and so many problems, so I'm taking Pitt.
Yeah, how about those Pitt Panthers if they win this one? 2-0 in the conference. All right, we got Virginia at Pitt, Cam.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Pittsburgh. I just think that they're a better team than Virginia is. Virginia is really, really struggling, and they have to go on the road to Pittsburgh. And with new coach Pat Narduzzi, who came over from Michigan State, if Pittsburgh is going to do one thing, they're going to play really hard. And I think that boxer's mentality is really going to serve Pitt very well. So I think they win.
All right, more boxing analogies. All right, Dan, we've got Virginia and Pitt.
I'm taking Pitt too. I think Virginia. They've been really struggling and really fighting it, and we kind of knew that was going to happen heading into the season. Kind of hoped they'd be able to get on a roll through the non-conference schedule if they were able to put something together, but that was hopeful, and that's not the way it is. I think Virginia's in some tough shape. And more importantly, I think they're also going into a Pittsburgh environment where Pitt is very good, underratedly good, and it's only going to be top 50 degrees on Saturday, and that seems to play right into the hard-nosed Pitt style and the smash-mouth Pitt style that I think that they're going to bring to the table. And as the weather starts dropping and the temperatures start dropping, it's going to be a little bit tougher for Virginia than it is for Pitt.
All right, Joey, like Dan says, they're at Heinz Field with the Panthers hosting Virginia.
Yeah, it's like I don't think particularly highly of Pittsburgh either. I don't know. To be fair, I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of teams in the ACC not named Clemson that I do think particularly highly of. But I certainly think more highly of Pittsburgh than I do of Virginia. Give me the home Panthers.
Quick show of hands. Is anybody taking Army over Duke? Okay. I think we can pass that one by. We've got Wake and BC. Is anybody taking Wake? All right. Let's get to 2 better games with Georgia Tech taking on Clemson.
Could I consider taking Wake just to see what kind of reaction it would get out of Dan?
Their offense is more likely to score points. I still got the funny thing is, my prediction, I got BC scoring 20 in that game on Saturday. They do not have a defensive turnover. I'm taking BC to score 20. So you can mark that one down as my bold prediction.
I'll stick with the Eagles.
Joey, if it's going to elicit some kind of response out of Dan, anything's allowed. All right, we got Georgia Tech and Clemson, Brittney.
I'm sorry, which one? Virginia Tech?
Georgia Tech and Clemson.
I got to take Clemson in that one. Sorry, Joey, but I think Clemson has played lights out. I think they're even better than what we saw last week against Notre Dame, so hands down Clemson.
What do you say, Cam? We got Georgia Tech trying to avoid 0-3 in the conference at Clemson.
Yeah, I don't see that happening for them, unfortunately. Shaq Lawson is playing like an absolute beast on the defensive line. Deshaun Watson and the offense, I forget the running back's name, but he's playing really, really well for them. I think, and then, I didn't even mention Artavis Scott at wide receiver. They just have too many weapons on both sides of the ball, Clemson.
They are pretty good. What do you say, Dan? Upset?
I'm going to go with a boxing reference on this. You want a prediction? Yes, prediction. Prediction? Bane. Sorry, Joey. I'm taking Clemson by a lot of points in that one.
Okay. Little Rocky 3 there. Very nice. All right, Joey. Georgia Tech and Clemson.
You guys have nothing to be sorry about here picking Clemson. I'm going to do the same. I think that the streak of 2 touchdown losses in Death Valley is probably going to continue. I have no reason to have faith against in Georgia Tech right now against a Clemson defense that is almost every bit as talented as they were last year and effectively shut down the offense then when it was a well-oiled machine. Have to imagine they're going to do the same when it's now a bit of a bumbling mess right now.
Joey, let's stay with you. I want Cam to finish this one out. Miami at Florida State, Joey.
Again, this is another one of those where I don't really feel great about either team. I like the Seminoles at home, unfortunately. Sorry, Cam, but I have to think that the Miami team is in all sorts of disarray right now. Going on the road to Tallahassee to play against a highly talented Florida State team, I can't pick Miami on that. Give me Florida State.
What do you say, Dan? Florida State undefeated, have not been impressive, but still unscathed, hosting the Hurricanes.
It's going to be a game of mental toughness. It's going to be whoever folds first is going to be the team that loses. And unfortunately, I think both teams, what makes this so incredibly hard to pick, I don't think both teams are put together mentally very well at all. I think Florida State is waiting for that fall off. I think they're capable of crumbling. I think Miami might be crumbling right now. That's the only problem. And anytime social media starts playing a role, that's never a good sign. And if Florida State gets an early lead, then things are going to go from bad to worse. And poor Al Golden he's standing on the tracks, and the train might be coming through. So I'm taking Florida State. I feel no confidence whatsoever in that pick, but I'm taking Florida State. Florida State's going to lose, and they're going to lose bad at some point. I just don't think it's going to happen this week.
Dan painting mental pictures for us of Al Golden on the train tracks. Ouch. All right, Brittnee, it's a big one, and you've set us up as looking at a close matchup here.
Yeah, I think it'll be a fairly close game. I think both teams have a lot of room for improvement, which leads you to a close game. I am going to take Florida State, though, for 3 reasons. One, it's in Tallahassee. 2, I mentioned earlier, Brad Kaya is one of the biggest assets that Miami has, but Florida's pass defense has been really, really good, so I think that will help neutralize that aspect of it. And then 3 was something that Cam touched on. Miami has been able to capitalize on turnovers. They've scored 27 points so far this season off turnovers. Florida State has yet to have 1 offensive turnover the entire season. They've only had 1 turnover, and it was on special teams. So I don't know that will necessarily end up being an advantage for Miami. But close game, definitely a reason for the Seminoles to be paying close attention and be on upset alert, because I know it would make Miami and Cam very, very happy if the Hurricanes were able to win.
Okay, Cam, it's a talented Florida State team, but one that's not even scoring against the likes of Wake and South Florida.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. I don't have any jokes, honestly. Before the season, I said 8 wins for the Hurricanes, and that included a win against Florida State. For us to get to 8 wins, we have to win this game. Unfortunately, I just don't see it happening. The Florida State is just plain and simple owned us. I talked about how we're not even playing the war chant at practice. When I was an undergrad at Miami, walking to class the entire week, you could hear that damn war chant playing, because that's what we did to get ready for this game. This game is special. This game is different. But this team for the Miami Hurricanes is not special. This team is not different than what we've seen. And I want very badly to be wrong. Please let me be wrong and bring me back on, and everybody can talk to my face and say, hey, you were wrong. I just don't see it happening. I think Florida State wins. I think the trend continues. It's going to be year 6 in a row. And I don't know what happens after this game, if we collapse like we did last year or not. But until I see us, the Hurricanes, beat Florida State anytime in this decade, because we haven't since 2009, I'm not going to believe it. So I'm picking Florida State.
It is a clean sweep for the Seminoles. Florida State 4-0, and of course I'll be sending in my prediction roughly at halftime. All right, you guys are the best. We got Brittnee Taylor Newman from football.com, Cam Underwood from the State of the U, Dan Rubin from BC Interruption, and also from SB Nation's from the Rumble seat on Georgia Tech. We got Joey Weaver, and this is the ACC Breakdown every Wednesday night at 8. All right, until we meet again, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
See ya.